Welcome to all my friends on Facebook, and also we're also recording on YouTube today. So again, we're back. It's Monday. We're reading from Letting Go, and it's one of my favorite books. On one of my favorite, personal development books and consciousness books on the planet, and it is written by Dr. David Hawkins, and Hawkins is past now. He's moved on and into another dimension, and so we can't see him, but his work lives on and on and on through us because he was just this amazing, enlightened being, and he left a huge legacy. And so I've been reading his book because I think that people want to experience a level of consciousness that without some knowledge isn't available. We don't have a language generally for feelings, what it is that we're feeling. We're not sure what to do with them. We confuse our thoughts with our feelings, and can't tell what came first, the thought or the feeling or the thought. And Hawkins actually just puts a lot of that to rest. And so if you're interested in self-discovery, if you're interested in knowing about how this system works and how we can kind of transcend the being trapped in our feelings and trapped in our thoughts that come as a result of our feelings, and then this book is the book for that. And so how to transcend and move up the consciousness ladder from let's say blaming and anger and fear into unconditional love and above. So that so that's what we're reading, and that's fun. Okay, uh, we're starting today. I think we're in chapter 4, and we're I think, are we in chapter 4? Yeah, and yeah, chapter 4, on page 63. And the subtitle is "Choosing the Positive." So here we go. One surprising effect of the willingness to let go of our inner negativity is the discovery that the polar opposite of the negative feelings exists. There is an inner reality that we can term our inner greatness or higher self. It has much more power than the inner negativity. In return for letting go of the payoff that we were getting from the negative position, we are now surprised by the positive payoffs that stem from the power of our positive feelings. For example, when we let go of blame, we experience forgiveness. Our higher self, which we might say is the composite of our higher feelings, has almost unlimited capabilities. We can create employment opportunities. It can create employment opportunities. It can create situations for the healing of relationships. It has the power to create the opportunity for loving relationships, financial opportunities, and physical healing. As we stop giving authority and energy to all of the negative programs that stem from our own thinking, we stop giving away our power to others and begin to own it back again. Nice. This results in the rise of self-esteem and the return of creativity and the opening of a positive vision of the future that replaces fearfulness. Wow, that's it. So, sounds pretty good, doesn't it? Yeah. We can experiment with someone with whom we have a poor relationship due to our holding of resentments. We can sit down and say to ourselves that this will merely be an experiment. The purpose for this, we tell ourselves, is strictly to learn. That is, we want to become familiar with the laws of consciousness and to watch the phenomena that occurs, that can occur, that occur, the phenomena that occur. We acknowledge the payoffs we have been getting from our negative feelings. We surrender each component and at the same time let go resisting that within us which would be willing to heal the relationship. At this point, it is not necessary to have any personal contact with the other person. We're doing this experiment for our own sake and not for them. As we look within ourselves, we ask, what is the anger covering up? Underneath the anger, we are likely to find fear. Aside from the fear, we also find jealousy. We find competitiveness and all the other limited components of the feeling complex that have blocked the relationships, that relationship. The stimulus, letting go of the negative and letting go of resisting the positive, result in a shift of inner energies. And there is an accompanying subtle change in our self-esteem. Letting go of a resistance to the willingness to have something positive happen in the relationship is all that is necessary. We can then just sit back and watch what occurs. In this experiment, we are not interested in we're not interested in whether or not the other person gets it. We are only interested that we get it. We are only interested in moving our own position in the matter, and then just watch what happens. A very rewarding experience usually ensues, which will take different forms depending on the circumstances. Another cause for apathy is the residual of previously experienced traumatic overwhelm, which has not been resolved. The mind projects onto the future, with the exception, mind projects onto the future with the expectation that the past will be repeated. When we discover this unconscious dynamic, we can choose to look again at the emotional complex, disassemble it into its component parts, let go of the negative aspects, and let go of our resistance to the positive ones. As we do this, our perspective of the future will change. We will forgive ourselves. We will forgive ourselves that at the time of the previous emotional overwhelm, we simply didn't know how to handle it. There were lots of residuals that left us emotionally disabled at that time. But because in the unconscious mind there is no such thing as time, we can choose at any time in the present to heal the past event. Isn't that exciting? In the unconscious mind, there's only now, no such thing as time. As we go through our own emotional healing for our own sake, that past event now begins to take on a different meaning. Our higher self begins to create a new context for it. We can see the hidden gift. We can end up acknowledging with gratitude that it gave us a new opportunity to learn, to grow, and to acquire wisdom. One of the most common areas in which we see this emotional crippling is after divorce. All too often, it is followed by bitterness and impaired capacity to create a new loving relationships. The unwillingness to let go of the blame continues the emotional crippling, which can go on for years or even a lifetime. Any of you familiar with that? Oh, me too. Nice to be free of that. When we come upon bitterness that we have really discovered is an unhealed area in our own emotional makeup, the effort that we put into healing, it will bring enormous reward. In any situation which involves suffering, we have to ask ourselves, how long am I willing to pay the cost? What were the karmic propensities to begin with? How much blame is enough? Is there a time to call an end to it? How long will I hang on to it? How much suffering am I willing to pay to the other person for their wrongs? How much sacrifice am I willing to pay to the other person for their wrongs, real or imagined? How much guilt is enough? How much self-punishment is enough? Well, when will I give up the secret pleasure of self-punishment? When does the sentence come to an end? When we really examine it, we will always find that we've been punishing ourselves for ignorance, naivety, innocence, and lack of inner education. We ask ourselves, when was I ever trained in the technique of emotional self-healing? When I went to school, Did they teach me courses on consciousness? Did anybody ever tell me that I had the freedom to choose what went into my mind? Was I ever taught that I could refuse all the negative programming? Did anybody ever tell me the laws of consciousness? No, no, no. If not, they, if not, why beat ourselves up for having innocently believed certain things? Why not stop beating ourselves up right now? We all did what we thought was best in the moment. It seemed like a good idea at the time, is what we can say about our past actions and those of others. We've all been unwittingly programmed without our conscious consent. Out of our confusion, ignorance, and naivety, we bought into the negative programs. We let them run us. But now we can choose. But now we can choose to stop. We can choose a different direction. We can choose to become more aware. We can become more aware, more conscious, more responsible, more discerning. We can refuse to sit there like a blank tape recorder, taking in every program the world hands us. The world is often too willing to exploit our naivety and play upon our smallness with all its vanities and fears. Sounds pretty exciting, actually. When we become aware of how we were manipulated, exploited, and taken in, anger is going to come up. Be ready to handle it. It's okay to be angry. It's better to be angry than apathetic by a long shot. In anger, we have a lot of energy. We can do something about it. We can take action. We can change our mind. We can reverse direction. Then it's easy to jump from anger to courage. On the level of courage, we can see it, examine it, and observe how it happens. We begin to see that our smallness was a bill of goods that we bought. In that investigation, we will stumble upon our own inner innocence. When we rediscover it, we can let go of a lot of guilt. When the guilt goes, necessity for self-punishment goes with it. And that lifts us right out of apathy and depression. Out of depression? Oh my gosh. You mean letting go is an antidepressant? Oh, sounds cool, doesn't it? Don't tell the doctors. Remember, I'm not a doctor. Anyway, I love what it says, though, that with that lifts us right out of apathy and depression. We can choose to revalidate ourselves, our value, and our worth. We can see how others were programmed just as we were. They, too, were doing what they thought was best at the time. We don't have to blame them or ourselves anymore. They can give up. We can give up the whole blame game as obsolete and ineffectual. Awesome. Page 68, the company we keep. Another valuable technique for getting out of apathy, depression, and situations which are predominantly being run by the thought, I can't, is to choose to be with other people who have resolved the problem with which we struggle. This is one of the great powers of self-help groups. When we are in the negative state, we have given a lot of energy to negative thought. We've given a lot of energy to negative thought forms, and the positive thought forms are weak. Those who are in a higher vibration are free of the energy from the negative thoughts and have energized positive thought forms. Merely to be in the presence is beneficial. In some self-help groups, this is called hanging out with the winners. I think you could come and meditate with us on Monday nights. And we have a group of winners here. You could come and hang out with us on Monday nights. Hang out with the winners. The benefit here is on the psychic level of consciousness. And there is a transfer of positive energy and relighting of one's own latent positive thought forms. In some self-help groups, this is called getting it by osmosis. It is not necessary to know how it happens, but merely that it does happen. It is common to witness phenomena. For instance, in our society, most people have been trained to be logical and left-brained in their orientation. However, some people from birth are right-brain orientated. Such right-brain persons are characterized by greater powers of intuition, right brain, intuition, creativity, telepathic communication, and awareness of thought forms and energy vibrations. Imagine that sounds like all my friends, mm, or a lot of them. Um, Frequently included among those capacities is the capacity to see the bioenergy field around the human body called the aura. He's talking about auras. When in the presence of people with this capacity, it becomes possible to share that capacity. This was true even as a skeptical, logical, left brain male scientist who was in the company of people with the capacity to see auras. Upon following their instructions on how to see the aura, surprisingly, there was indeed an intense field of light around people's heads. In particular, the aura around one man seemed to be almost ectoplasm, be like ectoplasm hung predominantly on his left ear. On the right side of the head, however, there was practically nothing to be seen. To know whether this phenomenon was real and not coming from the imagination, it was confirmed by poking someone nearby who was adept at seeing auras. She also saw an aura that was very wide on one side and practically absent on the other. The capacity to see auras was available only when in the presence of others with this capacity. I think the reason he's telling the aura story is because it's an example of how energy, being in the energy of people who are uplifted, it transmutes, it transfers into if you're hanging with people that have the energy, it happens to you. And he shows this example with auras. The capacity to see auras was available only when in the presence of others with that capacity. Upon leaving the institutional situation where there had been people who could see auras, the capacity was no longer there. The following years, when in the company of people who could see auras, the capacity returned. One time in the presence of a woman psychologist in a clinic whose job was that of the psychic diagnosis by means of observing people's auras and the changing color patterns, there suddenly was the capacity not only to see auras, but also to see them in their scintillating colors and watch the aura change in response to fluctuating emotions. Just by talking with her, that capacity was suddenly available. Wow, it was as though when we were in the proximity of the auras of people with certain capacities, some transfer of ability can take place. Simply put, we are either positive or negatively affected, influenced by the company we keep. Imagine that. Wow. So, yeah, hang with the winners. Yeah, that's the deal. It is unlikely that we will overcome a inhibition if we choose to be in the company of those who have the same problem. This phenomena was evident in the case of a divorced woman. Oh, he likes to tell stories. I love his stories too. They're usually quite simple. But, in the case of a divorced woman who came for a consultation, she wanted to know whether or not she should have psychotherapy. Her complaints were a recurrent ulcer and migraine headaches. As the story unfolded, great bitterness over her unfortunate traumatic divorce came forth. She had joined a consciousness-raising feminist group, she said. She described the particular group as almost completely made up of divorced women who were bitter, angry, and hateful of men. Imagine. As a group, they were getting a lot of payoff from their negativity. In reality, their lives were forlorn and rather pathetic, as they struggled to regain their self-esteem through extremes and marked emotional imbalance. After listening to her story and investigating her life circumstances, it was suggested that instead of psychotherapy, she follow one simple recommendation for a period of 3 months. It didn't work. If it didn't work, then she could reassess the need for psychotherapy. The recommendation was merely to discontinue her association with the group. and with her bitter divorced friends, with the group and with her bitter divorced friends, and instead seek the company of people who had successfully reestablished relationships despite former divorces. At first, she resisted and claimed that she had nothing in common with these group members, and then she acknowledged two basic facts. First, it was far more energy saving to foster relationships with positive people. Second, one of the laws of consciousness is that like goes to like. Bitterness attracts bitterness, whereas love attracts love. She asked herself, where has my bitterness taken me? Have I gotten anything out of it that is positive and helpful? As time progressed, she stopped spending time with her group and began to pursue relationships with healthier, more balanced people. In the company of happier people, she had an exhilarated awareness of how much negativity she was holding inside of herself. She began to be aware that she was consciously holding negativity and choosing to hold it. And she began to look at the cost of such negativity. Her whole social life changed. She became smiling and happier. Her migraine headaches disappeared. Eventually, she fell in love again and joked that falling in love was the best cure she ever had discovered for an ulcer. It's a simple story, but it's just so true. I see it all the time, especially in the recovery community. People are wanting to recover from addiction, and I encourage them over and over again that they really can't hang with the old crowd. It's just a fact. They say in the 12-step community, you only have to change one thing, everything. Anyway, so that is part of what happens. We do get a new crowd, a new group of friends that are kind of working on lifting themselves up. If you find yourself in a state of apathy, we can discover the underlying program by asking ourselves, what are we trying to prove? Are we trying to prove that life is rotten, that this is a hopeless world, that it isn't our fault, that one can't find love, that happiness is impossible? What are we trying to justify? How much are we willing to pay to be right? As we acknowledge and let go of the feelings that arise in response to these questions, the answers begin to appear. So cool. Well, so tomorrow we'll start on chapter 5. That's it for today. Tomorrow, page 72. I encourage you to order this book. And I think we're going to put together a book list pretty soon. Are we going to do that, Earl? Earl says we are. And of books that I recommend and that I've read through my life that I think are helpful. I think that reading, lifelong learning is so crucial. And if you don't have time to sit and actually read a hardcover book, go through it on Audible first. And books that I love on Audible, I bought the hardcover later, or the actual physical book later, because I love the feel of a book in my life. So we start tomorrow on grief. You can order this. There's going to be a link with this. You can order this book and have it for yourself. And if you want to go back, go to YouTube and go over some of the reading that I've done already and the comments that I've made on it. It's there. It's available. You can do that. And if you want to share it with friends, you can do that. And I think that's it. Love you guys. This is fun for me. I really get it as I'm reading it to you. So thanks so much for bearing with me as I kind of stumble through the reading. Love you guys. Cheers. Talk to you soon.